Hello and welcome to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. Liverpool are confirmed as Premier League champions and Crystal Palace stun Aston Villa to reach the FA Cup final, where they will face a ruthless-looking Manchester City. Ipswich are relegated and Rasmus Højlund scored a goal. This weekend really had it all. On today's show, we'll discuss all of that and hear about the co-owner of a League One club with big, big ambitions. I'm Tom Clark, and joining me today we have the senior sports writer and Sunday Times columnist Alison Rudd, the former striker turned columnist Tony Cascarino, and the former defender turned journalist Gregor Robertson is here as usual. We're all looking very summery. Tony's a lovely short sleeved shirt, Alison lovely blouse. I'm going on holiday at the end of the week. So quite frankly, another one. Do you know how? So quite frankly, there's the intro. Talk amongst yourselves. See you later. Greg, are you buzzing?
For what?
2 weeks of hosting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, of course. Sure the listeners are as well.
Yeah, they can't wait. Get rid of that gobbling northern bloke. Anyway, let's get straight into it. Liverpool, finally, we've known this has been coming for a long time, have sealed their 20th top flight title. Now, I'm sure, hopefully, some of you, when you're listening to this, have already listened to our special episode with Paul Joyce detailing all the brilliant things that Arne Slot and the team have done throughout the season. So we're not going to do loads and loads and loads on this because we've talked about how brilliant Liverpool are. But I just wanted to reflect first on Slot, Alison. The fifth manager to win the Premier League in his first season after Jose Mourinho, Carlo Ancelotti, Manuel Pellegrini and Antonio Conte. So pretty impressive company there. When you factor in also following Jurgen Klopp, his achievement, separate from the team, but his achievement as a manager is a huge one, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. No, it's amazing, really. If you step back from it and think where we were when he took over. So you've got all the people who were offended because they didn't know who he was. All the people who were offended that it wasn't Alonso.
Yes, which was most of you, which was most Liverpool fans, let's be honest.
All the people who really don't keep tabs on where Feyenoord are in the league and what they're doing.
All the people like you who thought he was crap for the first few months. He's not exciting.
And the fact that there are certain truisms in sport, and one of them is that it's the toughest gig to take over from someone who is beloved and successful and is seen as a significant figure in a football club. And because Klopp ticked every box in terms of personality, and he revolutionised the team, and he came after a very dispiriting period with Brendan Rodgers and sort of imposed his tactics, his style on the club, and significantly won trophies and did it with joy. And then he decides to go, and it feels like a bereavement. And I think I think not just Liverpool fans, I think most football fans would have expected whoever took that job to be slightly stupid to have done so. So that added into the mix. What is Arne Slot really arrogant, or is he a bit thick? And why has he done that? Why would you do that? Because it's toughest job. But clearly,
let someone be crap for a season first.
Exactly.
And then,
so you're the patsy. You are the patsy. Are you not? And I think there was a feeling that it would be a year-long stint and that Alonso would come when he was ready. That was the feeling at the time, and I felt that meant it was sort of stacked against him emotionally apart from anything else. And yet clearly behind the scenes they were impressed by the knowledge that he got what the job was, and he has his sort of XG management stats, if you like. He overachieved as a manager, points per what you're expected to get for who is in your team. They thought, no, he can do it. And sure enough, all the things that could have been seen as a negative, because he's comparatively quiet and comparatively lacks aura, I would say. I mean, he's gained aura through being successful, but in terms
he's got all the aura now.
Yeah, exactly. But at the start, you were asking me about how's this happened.
Yeah,
all the things that looked like they might be a disadvantage to him ended up being a huge advantage. The biggest quality of all is that magnanimity of spirit, that he didn't try and say, it's my way now. Forget Klopp. We're into the Slot regime. So you mentioned Mourinho, who came in and immediately did the whole special one thing, thereby ring fencing, sort of saying, "This now we're doing it my way. What's come before, forget about it. It's my way now." I am special. And Slot didn't do that. He was intelligent enough, practically and emotionally intelligent enough to realise what he had at Anfield wasn't bad at all. A few tweaks here and there, important tweaks, but there was nothing seismic going on in what he changed. The team that were out there at Anfield against Spurs winning the title would have probably been the same team if Klopp had stayed. It's very little in terms of change. And so I think to have that ability, it's like being brave enough to say, I'm not special, I'm just very good at continuity. That's probably what I'm going to be good at. And to do that and be successful, astonishing.
Tony Slot is the fourth manager to win an English top-flight title in his first season as Liverpool manager as well. Matt McQueen, Joe Fagan and Kenny Dalglish. So again, this guy's in impressive company now, isn't he?
Yeah, and I read Jonathan Northcross piece yesterday, article that he wrote about Arne Slot, and I thought it was really interesting. There was the comments of Jurgen Klopp of why he left Liverpool, because he's an emotional person. He has to have personality within his team, and relationships were massive to him. He felt he lost that at Liverpool, and that was one of the reasons why. So what has Arne Slot done? Well, he's rebuilt relationships, because clearly, I mean, I know Mo Salah got injured last year in the African nations, but his relationship with Klopp had started to go the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And he fixed that with quite simple stuff. And whether it was just, Mo, you got a place to play for me in this team, I'm going to get the best out of you. And even slightly, and Mo Salah spoke about yesterday after the game, that he told the manager, I'll just play slightly different. I'll still do a bit of the defending, which is like a manager listening to that and saying, well, hold it. He could have easily gone, no, you're going to be doing this. But he actually listened to Mo Salah and what he felt he could still give the team. But it was done in a really clever way. I think the fact that he showed a really smart way of being just intelligent, not to do too much, but also knowing that he can play the way he wanted without being the rock and roll that we've spoke about with Liverpool under Klopp. And also that Klopp and him have really got on. Klopp has seemingly from the outside been delighted that he's actually, when he moved on from Dortmund, he moved from Dortmund to say he wasn't the right man for the job anymore. And still was very much behind the people at Dortmund. Yeah. He's done the same thing at Liverpool. He's moved on, left behind a very good team, and with that, a manager that clearly had the confidence to know, I can do it, and it will be the same group of lads in a slightly different way. Yeah. But look, I mean, I've laughed, because this weekend I've listened to people on the radio saying, Liverpool, listen to all these comments coming in, Liverpool, the worst winners of a Premier League for years and years. And I'm thinking, hold on a minute. They can surpass Manchester City. If they win their last 4 games, they will accumulate more points than Man City did last season, who were extraordinary. Yeah. So they have done one hell of a job. Lost 2 games all season, Tom.
Well, you mentioned those 2 games. Between the defeats to Nottingham Forest in September and Fulham in April, Liverpool went 26 games without a defeat in the Premier League. Only 3 sides have had a longer run without losing within a single season. Arsenal, of course, the invincible season. Chelsea under Mourinho with 29 games. Liverpool in the 2019-20 season with 1 more game unbeaten. So, yeah, as you say, it's not this idea that, they've just kind of stumbled to the title. Gregor, they've been ruthless as well, and that's something that Slot has instilled in them.
Talk a lot about his kind of demeanour and his persona and being very calm and measured, but I think it's quite clear he's got a ruthless sort of steely edge to him as well. He just doesn't really show it to us, but I think all the noises coming out and a lot of in Paul Joyce's piece, he made that point as well. I just look across the team as well and I see improvement everywhere. Like the start of the season, crikey, dafties like me said that I thought Liverpool could finish like 5th or something. Everyone thought this could be a real season of transition.
Big of you to bring it up. Well done.
Well, I knew somebody would. I know it'll come at the end of the season, the clips. Anyway, but like there were so many question marks. Like Van Dijk was maybe slowing a bit. Same with Andy Robertson. Was there they were slightly short on numbers for a partner with Van Dijk as well, perhaps.
Hadn't signed anyone in midfield.
Didn't have a midfielder, yeah. Didn't really have a striker. Let's be honest. Darwin Núñez it's pretty obvious he wasn't going to be the guy.
Gravenberch as well, the emergence of him. That's Arne Slot.
improvement everywhere. Gakpo's improved, immeasurably. Jota, when he's fit, has been fantastic. Every time he comes back in the team, you realise how much they missed him, but he still adds so much to the team. Diaz as well for stages. Szoboszlai has kind of really flourished in the sort of number 10, a bit more advanced. I think he's eked improvement out of so many players. And it was an interesting piece, Johnny's piece. It's an interesting question about like how do you frame the Klopp era now? And I think he came to a quite kind of reasonable outcome as well. It's like actually probably ultimately all this reflects well on Klopp because first of all, as Slot has said, what he inherited was in a really, really good place in terms of the culture and the work ethic and all the things, those kind of fundamentals that even if there were some relationships that naturally after so long together were beginning to show signs of wear and tear, a fresh start, as Klopp said, can mean better things for you guys in the future too. So
he said that
it's kind of a very mature. It's been actually a very mature sort of changeover and transition by everyone involved. Like it's not really what happens in football very often in terms of even the ownership and like the guys who try and headhunt even Klopp saying initially, given a head start, like I'm going to leave, you guys need to prepare for this. Okay, they prepared, they went out and they found who they wanted, and Slot didn't come in and say I need to sign a player, I need to do something. He was like,
he didn't say, I love 3-4-2-1. No. I'm not doing anything else.
But Klopp said, didn't he? He wanted to leave the club that it will be a better place, even if he's not there, for the future. And which that has happened. He's left the club in a better place than when he first arrived.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about the future then, Greg, interesting hearing you talk there about Slot eking a lot out of the players that were already there. Of course, we know Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk signed these new 2-year deals and things. But because we've known about this title for so long now, the final question I think I have is, what now? What next? What do you think that the team, the squad that's there, needs a lot of additions? This is something that Paul Joyce has written about on the Times website about. This might be this strange thing of a new manager comes in, wins a title in his first season, incredible, and then does a rebuild after winning the title. Potentially, maybe make some signings and things.
Yeah, to me, I think it's really obvious from the key games that were lost, PSG, FA Cup, look tired, and you don't. The next stage to have a Slot era is to win multiple trophies, and there was a point where it looked like Liverpool might just do that this season, but they didn't have the depth really. They looked exhausted against PSG, and you kind of think, the timing of that. But it was sort of inevitable because the first choice in every position is a star, but then you start thinking you need just a bit more depth to be able to win, to have won 2 or 3 trophies. And that sounds greedy. It's not meant to be. That's how you're supposed to think. You don't just think, we won the title, that's nice, maybe we'll win it again.
But what I mean is that you might, it's interesting hearing us frame the squad currently at the minute, and he's got a lot out of him, and Greg is saying, he's really tweaked and, squeezed everything he can out of him. That to me sounds like, we need quite a lot more. I mean, Tony, they potentially should probably go and buying a striker, maybe?
Yeah, of course. Look, the lemon's been squeezed to the ultimate. It really has. I would say just look at history with what Manchester United did when they were champions. Look at Liverpool in the 80s when they were champions. Big signings come in all the time. I would expect that this summer. And I think that they would have had a long look at certain players that fit the Liverpool way, plus with a personality. Because that has been a standout feature of the last decade, of certainly since Klopp was there, the type of players they signed, whether it was Mane, Salah, Firmino, and many, many others, that Liverpool have been on this journey, have come second best largely to Man City. But Man City have done the rebuilding job of having great teams and letting Aguero go and then moving on to somebody else.
Do you think this is another part of thinking about when we're praising Klopp and the hierarchy for putting in the plans for this season, early last season, by Klopp saying his departure? Now they've won the title this season with a bit of time to spare. Well, we've known they were going to win it for a while. The planning has already probably begun, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think it probably had anyway because of last summer too. Like, they tried to sign Zubimendi. They tried, they did try for a midfield, older midfielder. It didn't happen. Like undoubtedly, they'll still see that's an area that they need to improve. And then obviously with the uncertainty about Van Dijk and Salah and clearly Alexander-Arnold, they'll be planning for those positions too. And I think they still should be. They still certainly should be for a centre half. I think Konaté's future is probably slightly uncertain. They've already signed Mamardashvili, is that the goalkeeper?
Mamardashvili, yeah.
Georgian names are tough, aren't they?
You did really well.
Like, incredible goalkeeper, so that's kind of future-proof there. And they definitely need a centre forward. We all know they'll probably look to sign a left back as well to compete with Robertson. So yeah, there's definitely areas of the pitch they need to improve. But there also is a lot of kind of young. Like didn't mention Curtis Jones. Remember the start of the season, Curtis Jones had he had a little sort of setback with injury as well. There've been players who stepped into the
Harvey Elliott.
How many times these players from the bench? Yeah, Harvey Elliott. Yeah, they start at the start of the season after the pre-season. You thought this could be his breakthrough season. I think he was really liked as well, and then he had a bad ankle injury, I think it was. So those players are still there. Still a lot of young players, and they're still young.
Will you want another season of just coming on in the 85th minute to shore things up? I mean,
he's very good at it, though.
He's incredibly good at it. He's like on my short list of player of the season, purely for doing that with a smile on his face.
Can we at least label it a niche player of the season, Alison, rather than a genuine one? I think you might slightly bait a few people into being frustrated by your usual whimsy and excellent off-piste analysis. Tony, just to Gregor's point there, you were going to jump in about the players that might need to be signed or players that are currently in the squad?
Well, it's a hard one because as much as Liverpool fans love him as Núñez and they're so desperate for him to do well, I've said all along, I don't think if you play him regularly, you can win the title. And that's ended up panning out that way for him. He's not clinical enough to be the number 9 at Liverpool. There's many strikers that are not clinical enough around. That if you buy a player that's at the very top order of goal scoring and really reliable, you are putting yourself in an incredible position because they'll win you games like a goalkeeper who produces great saves. If you think of Alisson, and I know Liverpool went out against PSG, but they were out the tournament completely.
They'd have been out in the first leg, yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't even have had a chance because he produced big saves at big moments. And I think Liverpool, it's obvious, isn't? I mean, there's so many clubs who want a centre forward, so there's going to be a real dogfight. But Liverpool are in the box seat because of what they've achieved this season. And I think players would get excited. I can remember John Barnes joining Liverpool. And, as a player, I'm thinking, wow, Liverpool made a major signing there. Yeah. And that was at the height of their success, that they went after a player. That's what I feel they need to do now. And I do think there's probably 3 or 4 that will come through the door and had a long time to think about who to... we look at the left-back area. I still think Andy Robertson's still a terrific player for Liverpool. He might not be the player he once was, but if you look at the boy Robertson at Fulham, left-back, really good player, progressed. Look at Kirkes, really good player. Yeah. But there's others out there. Yeah. And they'll probably throw a spanner in the works and one we ain't even thought about. Yeah. Osimhen's pretty much, I'm pretty 100% confident he'll be a Premier League player next season. It's which club get him.
Victor Osimhen, the Nigerian striker,
Yeah, he had a 1-year deal to go to Turkey for a year from Napoli. He's coming to Premier League. Yeah. I actually spoke to the captain of Nigeria. Forgive me, I forgot his name, but I had an interview with him and he said, big friends of him, said he's coming to Premier League this summer.
There you go. Loads of exciting times for Liverpool fans. And in case you're a Liverpool fan listening to this and thinking, why are you just throwing it forward all the time? There is a whole special episode with Paul Joyce. If you just go back one episode in your feed, going through the highs, lots of them, and the odd little low throughout the season to work out how Arne Slot got this brilliant title. So go back and check that out. Moving on, because there's loads of other things that happened this weekend, including, I think, the game of the weekend, Crystal Palace beating Aston Villa in the FA Cup semi-final. Absolutely wonderful achievement. Crystal Palace fans, just like to give a shout out to my friend Noel, who thought you'd won the FA Cup on Saturday afternoon. He was like, this is great for Palace, isn't it? Oh, delighted for them. What a great performance. I was like, mate, it's semi-final. They're not there yet. But it was still a great afternoon. It was still a wonderful performance. And, Alison, everyone thinks this is all about Ismail Assar, Wharton, Eze. It's actually the Alison Rudd factor in play again. You interview a manager exclusively. He then goes and wins a massive game. I presume you'll be speaking to Oliver Glasner again before the final.
Well, yes. Well, because I don't know if I should say this really.
Say
because
it.
I interviewed him the morning after they lost 5-0 to Newcastle. So he'd flown back. And I thought, what an awful time to interview somebody.
Also, big good lad energy about that as well. You'd be forgiven for him going, Alison, I can't be bothered talking to you after this.
So I was probably, because of that, I was probably a bit bouncier than I normally am. I was I was keen to compensate for any bad mood in the building.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
What'd you do? Bring a box of celebration?
No. Well, it was just. It was just a bit weird, but to his credit, he didn't think it was weird. He probably just thought, English people, they're odd, aren't they? But I was introduced in his office. And the last time I'd been in his office, I'd been there with Roy Hodgson. And the head of comms introduced me to Oliver and said, this is Alison from The Times, and she's good friends with Roy Hodgson. Which I thought was a bit odd.
Cheers, thanks for that.
And so I said, oh, well, when we're very good friends, Oliver, I will take you to my local Viennese cafe, which serves amazing, authentic Viennese pastries. And then I went, oh, I should have brought some today, shouldn't I? And his sort of bottom lip trembled a little bit. And the head of comms went, Oliver's very partial to a pastry, Alison. So I thought, this is getting really bad now. But he thought it was hilarious, fortunately. And to come back to your point, I was able to stop him making the same mistake as your friend, because I said to him, Wembley will be more bouncy for the semi-final because there'll be more real fans there. You might think it's fine, but it won't be. So,
absolutely.
I think I can take credit for that. For
Definitely.
him not coming out afterwards and saying to the media, I've made history with Crystal Palace. He didn't fall for it.
But it was a brilliant interview and a really revealing insight into his psychology and how he approaches football.
I've got my act together quite quickly after that.
But it was also
initial,
brilliant to see that kind of. It was like watching an interview on the pitch, I thought, because everything he said about being brave, being bold, taking the game to Aston Villa, they did absolutely everything. It was absolutely fantastic to see. And I mean, he completely gamed Unai Emery, didn't he? He completely won that tactical battle again. Absolutely fantastic.
But that's what I was. It's funny you say that because. As I was watching the game with my family, and I was saying, see there, they're being brave. And that's what he said. That's what he told them to be, brave. No fear about the moment, about making history. And also he was helped by the fact he played Villa 3 times and beaten them twice and drawn once. And
hammering won the 4-1.
And he'd noted that there was a deference to Emery in those games, that Emery had been the one to tweak his formation for Palace.
He matched them up in the last one.
Exactly.
When has Emery ever gone to that?
Exactly. So there was something going on there that Emery could see that Palace were going to give him problems, and that allowed Glasner to say to his players, we're not going to overthink it. They're scared of us. Play with freedom, enjoy yourselves. And boy, they did, which made it a fantastic game.
And it was, as Alison says there's obviously lots of tactical nuances that probably we don't even fully comprehend from managers, Gregor, but it was also quite simple to watch, wasn't it, in that bravery that Alison's outlined.
The pressing
was just...
Chances and the goals came
that
from
is
those
how
moments,
you press, isn't it? It was an absolute example and masterclass in how to do that.
And Villa do try kind of make rotations to get midfielders deep, to get them on the ball to kind of break through the line. So it is a bit of a clash of styles. Villa like to go through the middle of the pitch a lot, and they back themselves to get right in their faces and win the ball. They robbed Tielemans, robbed Pau Torres. They're brilliant at it. Like they're so kind of, I don't know, they're just so smart. Like not in just the way they press, but when they press, when the kind of the turnover in possession, they have so much kind of dynamism. Sarah's been a brilliant signing. He was kind of a bit of an under the radar
better
signing.
every time I watch him as well.
Yeah, he's been a bit, because he's someone who at Watford there was talk of him getting moved even to clubs like Liverpool in the early days, and then
he battered Liverpool on his own once, didn't he? Do you remember the 2 goals he got at Vicarage Road?
Yeah, absolutely.
You feel like he should have played more in the Premier League actually.
Yeah.
But he's been an absolute revelation, and Eze's goal was sublime. Mateta's kind of does both those things. He's brilliant at leading the press, and he also, as soon as they win the ball over, he just charging forward.
I've got to ask you a question, Greg. This is for all of us. Is he the most improved player you've ever seen?
Mateta?
Mateta.
That is a good category
I've
for the
never
end of the
seen
season.
a player
Tone,
that's improved.
might
that
be worth
much.
that holding that for an
but
entire
hold
debate.
She's saying hold it.
We've got
Hold it.
about 9 weeks
ask
of stuff.
Roy. You know, you're best mates with Roy. But you look at Mateta and I think, oh my God, how much of a better player
What
is
do you
he?
think is better about him?
Well, when I first saw him, I
as a
used to think,
striker.
well, he's 6'3", but he doesn't use his physicality very well. He doesn't jump particularly good in the air for someone who's that big. His touch is a little bit fragile. He doesn't particularly lead the line. He misses a lot of chances in front of goal. It reminded me a bit of myself.
You thought he was crap.
Honestly, I kept thinking,
But how much harder was it to be a striker? No offence here, Alison. I know because you're friends with Roy Hodgson. But it was harder to be a centre forward leading the line because you were really on your own.
Well,
and in comparison, now they have two people who we're talking about, Eze and Sarr, who are always in pretty close proximity,
Behind him,
and they have
people out wide.
Wharton really now in his sort of stride, who often as well as the guy who's just sweeping those passes with his left foot through balls.
But Gregor, he was also missing chances on a regular basis. Even in Roy's team, his conversion rate wasn't great. I mean, look, confidence of strikers is a big thing.
Yeah.
It just is. When players get on a bit of a roll, and I watch him now and I think, come on, how many are better than him in the Premier League?
I think they could be tested in somewhere, yeah. Could be.
Really?
I think they could, yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, he's 27 years old, and he feels like, from the guy I watched when he first went to Palace, which was, 3 years ago? Would it be around 3 years ago? And how he's matured as a player. I just think he's a completely different player to me. Watching him, his movement, his touch, I thought he was really unlucky on the goal that was disallowed. Yeah. I mean, I thought that was incredibly harsh for that to be disallowed. Yeah. And I, hands up, I just think, cool, you're some player now that clubs would be looking and thinking, you know what, the lad at Palace, wow, he's come on a bundle.
Yeah, signed in 2022, Tony, you're right, 3 years ago. And yeah, as you say, Gregor, still only 27. Who knows? Sorry, Palace fans. We'll get back to how brilliant you are. Rather than talking about how...
I can exclusively reveal, though, that JP has... the softest hands of any Premier League player.
We're coming up with all the different categories today. Have you shook hands with every Premier League player, though?
I've shook hands with a lot. And of those I've shaken, he has the softest.
Excellent. Top moisturising skills as
Fine
well.
moustache as well, I would say.
Mateta as well. Gregor, just on Adam Wharton again.
Yeah.
What a performance from him in terms of epitomising that bravery, but also desire, that press, nicking the ball and playing those passes. He is also starting to look like a hell of a player.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like a hell of a player since the moment he stepped foot into the Palace team, and you're talking about who's been the most improved player. There are not been many players who made the step up from the Championship with quite that level of sort of ease. It was remarkable. And he's also said, joining, that he knew that Palace are a club that have often given a platform to big signings from the Championship, and they've gone on to be successful. So it was a smart move from on his part too. But yeah, his left foot is a joy. It's like, always with the inside of his foot, really. But he can zip passes that are just perfectly weighted. It's almost like a little golf shot where he can play it. It looks like it's too fast, but then it holds up, spins back almost.
There's a special look on Gregor's face when he talks about left-footed passes, isn't there, Alison?
You went all dreamy there, Gregor.
The weight in the eye.
The weight of his passes are always just perfect, executed to perfection. He's a fantastic
player.
And
he's linked to Liverpool now.
Yeah. No, stop selling Palace's players. This was a great afternoon for them. Just a very quick word, Gregor, as a former left back, how did you feel for Tyrick Mitchell when he got his nosebleed in the box to cap that brilliant move and completely fluffed it with his right foot?
Probably been there.
Yeah, but also, what a great player. I really wanted him to score. I think probably a lot of Palace fans feel the same. A fantastic performance from Crystal Palace. Tony, Aston Villa, your former club, wanted to ask about them, but also about Ollie Watkins. He's the subject of your column in the game today. You think he's been treated unfairly by Unai Emery?
He's been at Villa for 5 years. He's been their top goal scorer in the Premier League for them in them 5 years. Every year he's been the number one striker. He's fought off Danny Ings, he's fought off John Duran. And it's a seismic moment when you come up against PSG in the Champions League and away from home. You might have been okay with being left out. I doubt if he was, but the fact that he'd been left out in the away leg, you might go, well, that was tactical. We looked at Marcus Rashford. We felt that offered, with it being the away leg, a bit more pace and directness in that area. But when you then take a 2-goal deficit back to Aston Villa and you get left out again, he came on, I looked last night, he came on in the 79th minute in Paris. Okay, so he's basically had 11, 12 minutes and a bit of extra time now. And then he's been sub and came on, I think, in around the 75th minute at Villa Park when they were. And look, he didn't particularly. I think it's a player who's completely had his nose put out of joint. And the important look, he was the main reason last season of why Villa were in the Champions League. His goals, his assists, absolutely brilliant.
Well, he went
Ollie
into the
Watkins.
Euros with people going, he should be playing instead of Harry Kane. And he scored that fantastic goal, didn't he, for England as well against the Netherlands? I mean, he was one of the best players. We're talking about Mateta now. We were talking about Watkins in the same way last season.
If you think about players' mentality, that you got, and I mentioned Steven Gerrard getting left out of Real Madrid, and I know he's achieved more than Ollie as a player, but then big games, the biggest game you've had for years and years and years, and then suddenly your manager decides to leave you out.
Does that work? You were talking about Mateta with strikers and confidence. Is this the inverse of what we're talking about now, where a player has reached his peak and is going, I'm the big I am around here, and then Unai Emery goes, I brought in Marcus Rashford.
Thinks he's the big I am.
No, but in a good way, good way, that confidence. Does it work the other way now, where you suddenly have a player who...
Tom, he was heartbroken. He'd have been heartbroken to be left out against PSG twice. The first one he'd have got happened, and people might look at it and go, oh, come on, it's a manager's decision. But for the player who's I've done so much, and he's still the top goal scorer for Villa by quite a long way in the Premier League. I just felt you've made a rod for your own back.
Do you think that's then impacting Villa now? In terms of when they're in this crunch point in the season, these big moments, these clutch moments?
It's a crunch moment it's a World Cup next year, and Ollie Watkins, you never know. Harry Kane might get injured. You might have an opportunity of playing. He will, look, and there's loads of clubs who'll be looking for centre forwards this year, and he's still 29. Everyone's talking like he's 33 and he's got no option. Ollie's still got a lot left in his game, and I'm telling you, the way he would have felt at the end of this season.
But why? I agree with everything you've said. It was a really good column. But why has this happened? Why, if you're Emery, would you do this? That's what I've been asking myself every time. Really? You've left him out again?
Well,
have you made some sort of deal with Rashford to make him look like...
You've essentially,
special one now.
You've left out a player that's been an absolute given for you in the last 3 or 4 years since he's been at the club for a low knee.
So why?
Well, he obviously thinks tactical.
He had a wee niggly knee injury for a spell, I should say that, but I know that's not been the only reason behind it. Like, I think Emery's always just trying to move the team forward. There was an issue with John Duran that he couldn't really solve that. He couldn't keep him happy, and he was a bit disruptive, so he was moved on. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't sign either. Like, if he doesn't sign Rashford next season and sells Watkins, and they try and go again. I think Villa have just got a huge ambition.
I think Ollie has to think about himself on this particular thing, because last thing you want to go is into next season and Villa get in a position of an incredibly big game and then find yourself on the bench again. He's not had a bad period. He's still scored 15 Premier League goals this season, and he's been in and out of the team of late. I think Villa have got problems in other positions. I think the 2 full-back areas are something Villa need to look at, because that, for me, was the ultimate difference. I don't think Digne's good enough at left back. I think that Sarr was taking him to task all the time. I think Matty Cash does a great job, but I still think the full-back areas are really vital to Villa.
I agree, actually. I felt that watching. I was at the second Paris Saint-Germain game, and I thought that was a big step up the level. They weren't quite there.
This weekend was great, but I'm already excited for this striker merry-go-round that's going to happen in the summer, judging by the insights on this show.
But we must say, what Palace have to do in the final is be just as, if not more, brave against City.
Absolutely.
And I think they will. I don't think they'll play it's Manchester City. I don't think they'll do that.
No, well, we can get into a bit of, it's Manchester City in the second half of the show, but it's time for a little break, which means it's time for the quiz question. Who am I talking about when I say a former footballer who played as a midfielder for Arsenal, Fulham, West Brom and Cardiff and scored twice at the 2002 World Cup? Find out after the break. Welcome back to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. I'm Tom Clark, and I've got Tony Cascarino, Gregor Robertson and Alison Rudd with me. Didn't get it. Thematic one.
What do you mean?
You did get it in the end. It took you a while.
A lot of clues.
I love how Gregor gets so offended when I say you didn't get it. What do you mean? I got it. It took you 20 minutes and about 3 clues, but you did get the answer, which was...
Inamoto.
Junichi Inamoto. What a wonderful niche shout that is. We're really stretching the quiz questions now, aren't we, towards the end of the season? Anyway, Alison, you teed us up for this conversation.
Sorry,
at the
timing
end.
was appalling.
No, it was perfect. Lovely 1-2 across the box. Well, now we're going to finish it with a tap in at the back post. Manchester City winning the other FA Cup semi-final with a 2-0 win against Nottingham Forest. Every time this happens in this competition, I keep thinking back to our colleague Tom Ulnut on this Monday show many months ago when we were talking about the FA Cup and I was getting excited about, these teams are still in it. Fulham, Palace, Forest. This is so exciting. And he just went, well, City are going to win it, aren't they? What's your problem? City are going to win it. And I go, you're bloody going to be right, Tom, you annoying little son of a gun. But anyway, they might win it. And they're looking a little bit ominously ruthless, should we say, maybe? Do we think?
No, they're looking good. They're looking good. They're looking good. They were looking good in this game, mainly because of Kovacic, because as we know, they've had a midfield issue.
Kovacic.
And Kovacic has been disappointing because he hasn't been able to step into the Rodri shoes and hasn't been trusted to do that often. But when he's in the mood and it's going well for him, he can dictate a game as well as any midfielder can. And honestly, he is one of my all-time favourite midfielders when he's. Unfortunately, he's not consistent enough, but he can. He will win possession with a sort of thuggish elegance. It's amazing what he does. And then immediately, as he wins the ball, he's thinking about the pass. He's thinking about the weight of pass and who's running. That's what you want from a midfielder, isn't it? So I think he ran the show, and that was probably the difference, and gave City that thing they have in finals and semi-finals. But I don't want to sound bitter on a day when we've been talking about Liverpool winning the title.
You're annoyed at Pep. It's all right. You can.
I am annoyed actually. I understand completely why he says winning the FA Cup doesn't mean much for them and it won't save their season. But
did he say that?
He has said that several times actually.
No, he said it wouldn't make this any less of a bad season. Really, essentially,
That's the same thing. He's saying
it
doesn't
mean
no,
it doesn't
no,
mean
he's
anything to
saying
them.
it doesn't. He's saying it doesn't. By saying it's not going to save their season, he's saying it's a small competition. It's a small competition that means nothing in the pantheon of achievements that he's done. Therefore, don't play a blooming B team and don't have the good sense not to win it.
Football
then
doesn't work that way.
I just think what it would be absolutely. Given we were all so excited at who qualified for the semis, and that it's been a sort of surprising FA Cup season where teams have been like, "Oh, this could be our first ever trophy, first ever major trophy."
What you
and
want
teams
City
that
to
we
roll
admire,
over?
and no, hang on, and teams that we've admired have reached the quarters and the semis because they run well, and we've enjoyed the personalities involved and their style of play. And I don't think it's a bad thing at all that City, the most successful team in the past 10 years, in the mix. That makes sense. But I just don't like when the manager of that team makes it clear to everybody winning the FA Cup is not going to save his season.
But to be fair, I think this is the question that Pep is being asked rather than something he's putting forth like forcefully. He was asked the same question when they won in the league the other night as well. And before the interview even finished it, he's like, no, the season has been a disaster. There's no way that can change. Like, it's the truth. They were absolutely awful for a good half of the season. And more than that, at the start they were even although they were grinding at results, they weren't convincing, and now they're returning to a bit of form, but it's still not City of old. So it's been a disastrous season, and winning the FA Cup won't change that.
But he could say, but I'm so glad in the FA Cup we've got our act together, and I love the trophy, and I love Wembley, and
That's not what he's being asked, though.
No, but he's not stupid. He just makes it sound like it's a crumb on his lap, and he's going to swat it away.
I think it's a bit more than that, but it's just the harsh reality is that as much as we're getting giddy, and we got giddy about the fact that all these teams are, the FA Cup really means something to them. Also, we shouldn't go overboard about that. How many seasons and how many years now have we seen them put out their B teams in the FA Cup because they're just focusing on staying in the Premier League? This season they don't have to because everyone's stunk the place out. So it's like, okay, we can throw off the shackles a little bit and have a go in the FA Cup. So everyone's got their priorities, and clearly for most teams, it's not the FA Cup.
He was a little bit spark because you was with me, weren't you, against Man City when Leyton Orient took on City in the Cup, Gregor, and when the journalist pulled him up.
Yes, it served a purpose. They're very much for it. It was like, it's like, this has got us back to our roots. This is how we can find just because we're Man City, we were brought up in places like this. He was lauding Jack Grealish. He was like, he's a street footballer. How passionate was he in that press conference
We
afterwards?
were laughing, weren't we? Because some journalists pulled him up for saying Orient and not saying Leighton, didn't he? He said, well, it's Leighton Orient. And Pep didn't, okay, then started to talk, we didn't know all the names of the teams at the lower end of the, the pyramid of football. Yeah. I think he can take some pride out of this victory, as in...
And they've not won it yet, let's also make that.
I said this victory, and I was going to say against Forest, because he has slightly turned them around, and it's not been a massive improvement, but he selected Jack Grealish at the weekend, which I thought was quite odd, considering that he's been nowhere near the team. Yeah. And Doku had come in, and he finds Doku's on the... You can never second guess, Pep.
I actually think you can.
Too.
You can guess.
Well,
I've worked him out.
Oh, you have?
Well, because he did Doku, didn't he? And said, he's the best, he's amazing,
and then
over
he
5 yards. That's the key.
Right.
That's the key. If he comes out and says how brilliant he is, and then you watch it, and then you stick him in your fantasy team, he then leaves him out. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it's all about.
Yeah.
If he's not played for weeks, you'd be like, Jack Grealish is definitely going to start in the pocket on Saturday.
Well, he's been doing that quite regular, hasn't he? It's like the one when he spoke to the player. Who was the player he spoke to at Southampton?
Redmond.
Yeah, when he talked to him about what a great player he was. We never tried to sign him.
Yeah. You're a genius. Why aren't you doing this? Anyway. But on City, they deserve to win the game.
Yeah,
they were the better team.
the most, they're stating the obvious really, but the most important factor in this game was that they took an early lead, and Forest need the opposite to be the case for their kind of game plan to really work.
Yeah.
So many times they've taken the lead, had something to hold on to, and as more space opens up, then they hit them again on the break.
Yeah, need that
Elanga
chance to go in as well, don't you?
It killed them.
Well, they hit the post 3 times.
They
Was it
did,
3 times? Yeah.
3
times. They had... It's a hard one to take for them, but...
Gibbs White's volley was an absolute peach.
Yeah,
off the bar.
Time for the Monday regular feature for the last few weeks. Gregor, Nottingham Forest end of the season. How are they going to do? It's got a big game in the league against Brentford. Still gonna do it. Can they regroup?
I think so. I don't know what else I can say about that. You ask me this every time.
You're getting more and more nervous. That's why I just think it's a nice regular feature for Nottingham Forest fans to hear one of their former players just have the belief in them all the way to the end of the season that they are going to get over the line and finish in the Champions League places.
I still think, on the whole, their fixtures are a little bit kinder, though they're not easy. I think they've got to go to Palace. I think they've got to go to
Newcastle. Have they got Newcastle?
I think they've got to go West Ham. They've got Brentford, and they've got Chelsea at home on the final day. So Chelsea could be decisive, but
I think Chelsea have got Forest and Newcastle.
Forest have got home to Brentford, away at Palace, home to Leicester, away at West Ham, and home to Chelsea on the final game of the season. But it's all right, Forest fans, don't worry about this FA Cup. Gregor Robertson says you are getting in the Champions League, and that is
just about
final.
You didn't really say it. You forced it out of him. Just saying he's an ex-Forest player.
Tony, you have been on this podcast long enough to know that
You're like Pep.
As a Gregor Robertson prediction goes, that is about as definitive as it gets. Both things can be true. They might get in, they might not. No, they can't, Gregor. They're either in or they're out. Anyway, Alison, I wanted to briefly ask about the game that you were at on Sunday.
I've completely forgotten.
Yeah.
You know when you said Alison, I wanted to ask you about. I was thinking, what?
What the hell is he going to ask me now?
What am I going to be asked?
Bournemouth 1, Manchester United 1, and Rasmus Højlund scored a goal.
Well,
I am always pleased. I'm pleased for him, aren't we? We're always pleased for Rasmus Højlund when he scores a goal. He just
absolute masterstroke, keeping him on the pitch until the 96th minute when he'd done nothing up until that point. Got to hand it to Amorim for that, haven't you?
Especially when I put Kepper in goal for my fantasy football team as well. I was absolutely fuming.
Yeah. No, this was...
Did we learn anything from this game about either team?
Not really. It sort of confirmed my prejudices, is what I'd say. I'm 100% convinced that had Evan Nielsen not been sent off, Bournemouth would have seen it through. They did visibly tire in the last sort of 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and there were 9 minutes of added time, which I think punctured the spirit a bit. And they thought, oh, okay, got to hang on a bit longer. And the goal was a bit freaky, a bit fluky. The ball sort of hit Højlund really, rather than it being an amazing finish.
There's a man round this table who'll tell you they all count.
I know they all count. They all count. Indeed, they do. And normally, if a team sort of gets a point from a almost last minute kick of the game, you would praise them for their character and resilience and so on. But the most of the character and resilience came from the home team, and you have to remember they are. It's a small ground. It's a small club. They have spent a lot less than Manchester United, and played as if they were the big club. They played with freedom. They looked like they were enjoying their football. There was a tightness to Manchester United, which only really loosened when they realised they were playing against 10 men. And then they started to play good football. But really, I think I made this sort of point, is this what it's come to? You feel like you should praise Man United for being able to loosen up a bit because their opposition, a much smaller club, are down to 10 men. Is that what it takes? So I do feel I didn't really learn more than I knew going into it.
How did you find Amorim in the press conferences? Always like to ask you guys about your interactions with managers in press conferences. Yeah. You're a good reader of characteristics, demeanour.
Yes, didn't shake his hands. Can't tell you how soft they were. But he was...
One to aspire to next season, maybe.
He was as downbeat as I've seen him.
Right.
He said he felt it was points dropped. I don't know if he was like acting that out. Clearly wasn't. I mean, they were lucky to get the draw. No, he looked.
They're in a weird place.
He looked. I'm trying to think of. I don't really want to attribute too much to him because I don't know him. But usually he tries to find the silver lining, and he's a very smiley person.
He's great for a quote.
And he's very quotable, you're right. And we'll find something, pick on something that is upbeat sort of thing. Upbeat thing. And he was quite low, I would say.
Interesting.
I think you can see these 2 games coming up against Bilbao and he's thinking...
Saving his energy for that.
Oh, my goodness.
Saving his energy for that. We'll move on from that game then, seeing as we learned bugger all from it. And it was completely rubbish. Neil cut that to 5 minutes. We'll just talk about something else. Anyway, we talked in the first half of the show about a brilliant exclusive interview that Alison did last week with Oliver Glasner. Now it's time to talk about another brilliant exclusive interview that Gregor did with Tom Wagner, the co-owner of Birmingham City. A very, very punchy bloke, isn't he, Gregory? He's got big, big ambitions for Birmingham City. Of course, promoted to the Championship this season, completely dominated League One, but he wants to take them even higher.
Yeah, he's not afraid to lay out his ambitions. I don't think I've actually ever heard an owner or a chairman be quite so kind of open on, like nakedly ambitious, basically. Yeah. So bullish. There are plenty of clubs who have great ambitions. Their neighbours, Villa, are one, but you don't really hear their owners kind of shouting about it too much. They say, we want to return this club to the Champions League, whatever. But this guy's saying that when they're in League One and when their first season was an absolute disaster. They hired 4 managers, including Wayne Rooney, that famous sort of experiment that went wrong, and were relegated for the first time in 30 years to the 3rd tier. But it's been so strange. I mean, despite all of that, I remember being at Wayne Rooney's first game, and it was first home game, and it was toxic. He was getting a dog's abuse as he kind of left the field and stuff. I thought, this is going to go really badly wrong. And then by the end of the season, kind of strangely, there was this huge sort of sense of optimism about the future still, despite the relegation. And the Birmingham fans I was at the game yesterday as well against Mansfield, and they get the trophy presentation and stuff, but throughout the game, throughout the season, they've had this song, In For A Shock. We were Birmingham City, we're in for a shock, with like tongue very much in cheek, because that's what they were told at the start of the season. There's a hard division, Sunderland, Leeds, Forest, Sheffield Wednesday, big clubs have taken a while to get out of this league, and it just doesn't matter how much money you've got when you're going to play whoever on a cold Tuesday night.
Lincoln City.
Yeah, Lincoln City, of course. Mansfield, who they played yesterday. So, it's not easy. And so they sing this kind of with the tongue in cheek. And I think as Wagner outlined to me in the interview, the Championship might be in for a shock because they've been driving their rev. It was quite a kind of, despite his bullishness, it was almost refreshing to hear him, the way he frames approaching football as a business, because how many owners with pockets as deep as this? He fronts a £10 billion hedge fund, so they've got a lot of money behind them. But how many owners of football clubs in England now throw all the money at wages and players and everything on the pitch, and then find a way to get around the spending rules afterwards? He sees as the first goal to drive the revenue, so he came, and he knows his stuff. He came out with he knows all the spending rules in the EFL and how they change in the Championship and then the Premier League. He knows them inside out. He said, clubs with parachute payments have a 1 in 4 chance of winning promotion to the Premier League. The rest of the clubs have a 1 in 16 chance. So our start point was we need to get revenues commensurate with the parachute payment clubs, obviously without without receiving parachute payments. Yeah. So they've driven the revenues. Obviously, Tom Brady's there. They've got undefeated, Nike, Delta Airlines, all these companies, and they are next season going to have revenues at the same level as the parachute payment earning clubs. So they have the financial power to compete at the top end of the league. Obviously, they still need to make the good decisions, but he sees that as the starting point. We have the money now to compete.
That was just a remarkable quote, just for listeners. He said, if our revenue progresses as we expect into next season, which is basically a certainty, we will be the highest revenue generating club in the Championship ever, not receiving parachute payments, and we'll be on a par with those receiving parachute payments. He then went on to say, if we then progress 1 year further, and we're fortunate enough to end up in the Premier League, we'll be a mid-table club or better in total revenue first year in.
Yeah, so he essentially uses revenue figures as a kind of proxy of plotting Birmingham's route to the very top of English football. And by the very top, I mean the Champions League, because, and again, this is remarkable. You're hearing a League One owner say this to you, but that's year one in the Premier League, mid-table revenue. And this is revenue without TV money.
Yeah.
So everyone gets the TV money. He's talking about when you strip all that back, we're a mid-ranking now, mid-ranking table in the Premier League. Then they've got the plans for a £3 billion sports quarter, which is like a 60-acre site between St Andrews and the city centre, like a mile from the city centre. That was a huge reason why it attracted them to buy Birmingham, because he came close to buying an English a Premier League club actually. So once he said once we get that puts us in the Champions League realm of revenue, because they'll have a 62,000 seater stadium. Loads of revenue coming in.
It's big talk, isn't it? It's big talk.
A bit like the Manchester United. So it's on that scale. Manchester United now building this huge stadium, everything around it. It's all revenue generating. That's what he's saying. That's the business. We do that. We're in the top 4 or 5, and then we can compete to be top. So he just lays it all out. And then yesterday at the game, he wasn't hogging the limelight or anything, but eventually he was asked. The fans love him. They absolutely love him. They think Tommy Wagner is a blue. He hates Villa, and he gets the microphone and he says to you, "I promise you, this is not the best moment we will enjoy together. It's not even close." And the fans just go like, they believe it. So it's like,
did you believe it?
Well, there's a remarkable energy now at St Andrews. I'm serious. Like it's They laid out 26,000 scarves on every seat. There was queues before the gates opened at St Andrews at 1:30 to get in. The fan park's heaving. The other kind of amphitheatre outside the Kop, sea of blue, like 2 hours before the game. And I know this is the trophy presentation. It's a party. It's the first time they've won a title in 30 years, a league title, that is. But it's been like this every week. It's just been packed out. They've had attendances of 26,000, which is more than most teams in the Championship. And there was just a great energy inside the stadium, and I'm confident they'll go into the Championship with a confidence. Like as I say, I'll say it again: the Championship is a batshit league. The average losses are 370,000 a week. So they're putting themselves on a level with the clubs who've got the most money without really having to lose it. And that's going to give them a chance. They still have to make good decisions. They've made some bad decisions. Hiring Chris Davies was a good decision. They play some really, some of the goals yesterday were brilliant. They're playing against Mansfield. It's going to be a big step, but they will be backed again. And, maybe Jay Stansfield's 15 million signing or whatever it was will be a transfer record, no more.
Blimey. We're very exciting on this show about the future, aren't we?
Going to the bookies.
You stick a fiver on them to win the promotion next season, Tone. I mean, it's punchy stuff. I will just also say as well, Gregor, we get all these stats with our pieces these days. We can see when traffic's picked up. There was clearly a moment on Friday when we'd published this article where it reached the realms of Aston Villa fans, because it started going absolutely bananas on Instagram, social media, and online. Because clearly
my mentions were hilarious.
The Aston Villa fans not on board with this,
because he's so punchy that he says not only can I not wait for the day when we play Aston Villa, he's essentially saying, I can't wait for the day when we play them in Europe. So he's not, he's not just saying, can't wait to see Villa.
Confident he was.
I want to, because to also just say, it's like, he's not he loves the animosity, but he also thinks Villa being strong and back in Europe is a good thing for Birmingham.
Yeah.
He said at the end he wants to knock Manchester off its perch and make Birmingham the strongest city in football in England. So like, big bold words, but who knows? You get the impression.
Talk is cheap, money buys racehorses.
We'll see. I mean, he's got enough money, Tone. I'll tell you what, he could buy a couple of racehorses and a few more strikers, as well as Jay Stansfield. If you want to read Gregor's excellent article with Tom Wagner, just search for Gregor's name and the Birmingham owner, and it'll appear for you, and you can check it out. Birmingham, of course, will be in the Championship next season, where Ipswich Town will also be. The relegation places completed. We've had a chirpy show, but I'm going to end it on a downer, just because I do think it's worth acknowledging. 4 games to go, all 3 relegation places sorted. We need to. This can't go on. This can't go on. We don't want this to go on. How can this end? We don't want to get too much into can the teams coming up next season, can they stay up? We did a bit of that on Thursday's show. But Ipswich, Gregor, do they deserve a bit more praise perhaps than the other 2 sides for having a bit more of a go? And also, speaking of Birmingham punching above their weight, this was always going to be a big task, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Leicester and Southampton, this is their first season out the top flight, broadly speaking, in a decade. Sorry, last season was. Bounced straight back. Very different story for Ipswich. It had been 22 years away. Been in League One 2 years ago. So it was a big ask. And there have been moments during the season where you thought there was there's makings of possibly a fight. I still kind of held out some hope.
You did,
even late into the season. But I think they just sort of lost confidence, lost any sort of belief really that they could do it, and that's proved their kind of downfall. But they spent a lot of money and still haven't really come close. That's the biggest worry for the Premier League. It's not
15 points short of the next team above them, which is West Ham. 15 points behind them.
So the question is, what does this mean for Leeds and Burnley? It means that you can't there's no room for error whatsoever. You've got to, even if you spend money like they did, as I said before, they were the 13th highest spenders in Europe, about 115 million, something like that. It's a lot of money to invest in one transfer window. You got to do it really well. You've got every signing's got to be a hit, because the gulf is enormous, and the fact that 17 clubs have had several seasons to sort of establish themselves very much as Premier League clubs makes it even harder.
Can I just make a point? It's there are 3 that have gone down, but when you look at the table and you go 17 downwards, you go West Ham, Tottenham, Everton and Man United. The 4 teams above them.
Battle for 17th is a cracking competition, isn't it?
But if you think that all of them clubs can get 50, 60,000, watch them every week, and they're 17, 18, 19... 17, 16, 15 and 14.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I look at the table and I think, Manchester United, Everton, Tottenham and West Ham are just above the bottom 3.
It could have been so much more exciting and dramatic, couldn't it?
Yeah. Well, listen, you've got a couple of weeks, guys, to get excited about the battle for 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th, and the battle for 17th. That's all to come on the Game podcast. Speaking of the Championship, me and Gregor will be back with an EFL Extra show on Tuesday, and Gregor and the gang will be back on Thursday to review the European action, but we'll leave it there for now. Tony Cascarino, Alison Rudd and Gregor Robertson, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you too for listening. We'll see you soon.